Okay, well, welcome. This is going to be a trial lecture, my first one that I'm doing using this particular application. And so this is Dr. Delmar, and we are going to just jump right in. I'm going to reel this all the way back a couple of weeks back to the beginning of your course. You should have already gone through the PowerPoints and the lecture materials that are online, or the chapter materials online in regards to the first, some of the foundational items, but I want to reel it back and make sure that I also provide you some lecture so that I'm confident we are all on the same page as we move forward in this history course this semester. It's very important that we're all on the same page because you will not be able to make an A in this course if you do not understand what I'm about to present to you today. And what I want you to understand is that you can look at your chapters, you can memorize facts, you can regurgitate what you see on the PowerPoints, and you can Google things, but that does not mean that you have a fundamental understanding of the concepts. It does not mean that you're able to apply and that you're able to transfer your knowledge. And that, to me, is really what history is about. History is about a lot more than just those concrete facts. So I need you to understand what I'm looking for. For example, in your discussion post, it needs to, when a discussion post asks you to apply and make connections, you need to know what applying and making connections means, because if not, you're not understanding what I'm looking for. So you've already done introductions. Let's talk a little bit about why we study history. I want you to turn to your partner, and then we'll share a few out with the class, and then we'll watch a short video. I am, for this purpose, going to pause for about 15 seconds, and then I'll go to the next slide. This is where you as a class will pause this lecture and complete the activity that's on your screen. Okay, we're going to move forward. Hopefully some of you guys come up with some of these answers on your own. If not, you need to really dig deep into these things, these concepts that are presented to you in front of you. This is ultimately what history not only is, but allows you to do. The more you study history, the more you delve into the topics and think and share and discover, the better you are at doing what's in front of you. And what's in front of you here on the screen is what you need to be successful, whether it's in college or in a career, because employers want you to be able to do and perform and be proficient in these skills. And you, for your own edification, for your own self, you should want to master these skills, because if not, you're just a pawn that goes through life thinking that what they present on the news or in newspapers or on news feeds, however you get your information. We present things and you just think they're right, and that's just not true. You need to be able to have a critical eye and understand multiple perspectives. You need to understand, for example, in number 3, where it talks about interpretations. Facts are facts, but they can be slanted. They can be interpreted differently. Think about a trial where you have the prosecutor that presents a certain amount of facts, and those facts are presented in a way that just have you convinced it to one way, but then the defense attorney is going to come up and they're going to present probably a lot of the similar or same facts, but they're going to have a different interpretation. And it's up to you, the jury, if you're on a jury, or it's up to you if you're in some other kind of life event where people are giving you multiple sides to a story. It's up to you to be able to look at that evidence and make a informed decision. And so that really is what history is. So I'm hoping that as I speak, you're looking at these different elements of what history is and what it helps you to do, and that's some of the things that you guys were able to come up on your own. If not, I can promise you that by the end of this course, you will be able to do some of the things or understand that this is what history is for. So probably most of you have never seen this word before. I want you to think for a minute about what it might mean to you. If this is the SAT or the ACT, how would you break this word down? What do you see in this word? I'm imagining there's probably one or two of you out there that got this, and there's some others that are saying, well, that makes sense. So the study of historical writing is really where we get into analyzing documents, and you'll have an opportunity to practice some of that during this course. But you have to know the difference between the various types of historical sources. So again, this is a fundamental understanding for history that you need to know. So before we go on with the content, I'm going to present a little bit to you about that. Obviously, history, we sort of think it's told one way when we look at our history books, but obviously, there's different accounts of different events. So think about the author of history. If you're on the winning side of a battle, or if you work for a king or queen or a government, then obviously you're probably going to have a little bit of a slant or a perspective. So I'm going to pause for about another 15 seconds while you talk about this and share out maybe some different examples you can think of where this might be relevant in history. Okay, so similarities, differences in different documents. Think about some of the different documents or books or sources that are out there. I want you to, and you don't necessarily have to stop and do this with a partner unless you guys do have time for this. Just real quick, we can popcorn around the room and think about some of the differences, similarities. Just share out what some different documents are even that we look at when we study history. And again, I'll pause. I'll give you a few seconds to pause this recording. Okay. So I'm assuming you've shared some of the examples. One thing to keep in mind is who writes the source. When was it written? When you start analyzing and thinking about not just the content of a source, but who wrote it, when was it written, under what circumstances, that's when you really start to think like a historian. A historian is not just reading. I hope you all can read. Reading does not a historian make. A historian is a thinker, someone who can break down and understand the document and who wrote it and why. So think about this example, and again I'll pause, you pause the video, and then you think about the specific example.
Again, I hope you all can read.
Okay, so we're talking about the difference now between primary and secondary source. So some of you may have shared this. Okay, if not, here's the differences. So you might want to pause this recording so that you can copy that information down. Okay, so if you are looking at historical sources during the actual time period, it can give you an insight into the minds of people. You can also begin to see the different perspectives and come up with your own historical conclusion. One thing that historians also study outside of just sources are artifacts. So here's some information about artifacts. This is probably what you're most familiar with. This is usually what a lot of people get excited about. You know, they make all kind of movies about archaeologists and this finding long lost artifacts. We tend to get a little bit more excited about artifacts than we do documents sometimes. But you know, they each serve their purpose. You'll see here in this slide here, it talks about what archaeologists do. So, if you know, obviously, I would want you guys to pause this long enough to capture the essence in your notes about artifacts. And so, we're studying artifacts, and we're looking at documents, both primary and secondary, and we're really looking back on history to try to understand culture, the unique way of life that a group of people lived. And those that study culture are anthropologists. So they study the artifacts, they make conclusions. Again, pause this, capture the essence of this slide. These, and I'll just keep repeating this so that you understand, are the fundamental concepts that you'll need to know as we move through week to week. And then specialization. So if you're building on your knowledge from the PowerPoints that were presented, and you're looking at the week to week, we start to talk about different cultures that rose, and we're talking about different groups of people. You'll notice that as we moved from, as agriculture developed and grew, that people started to specialize. And people began to be able to do that because of the steady food supply. Okay. And therefore you have complex cultures develop, and then you have your civilizations. And so you've already begun to really look at some of the different civilizations. Again, I just really wanted to make that connection. I'll go back one more time to, talk about, we're talking about sources, artifacts, then you've got cultures that we study, people are specializing, and then you've got civilization. So here's some just really key terms and understandings that will help you as you move forward in this course. And I know that civilizations and Mesopotamia, that when we look back at some of the first groups of people that organize into what we know as civilizations, you should be here in your studies by this point in the modules, but just making sure we're all tracking. Okay, so I want to just stop for a minute and just remind you to ensure that, I'm just going to go back to the beginning here, that you understand conceptually what we're going to be studying in world history. We're going to be studying facts, yes. We're going to learn about different groups of people and their movement and their civilizations, and we're going to learn about just a lot of different time periods. And so yes, you need to know facts. Yes, you need to understand how to study so that you can remember all of these different things. But